Hey, welcome to this explainer. You might think that getting incredibly precise instructions about your elbows, your hips, or your fingertips is exactly what careful, high-level coaching looks like, right? Well, actually, a quarter century of motor learning research suggests that aiming your attention at your own body parts might literally be ruining your mechanics. Today, we're going to dive into a totally fascinating shift in how we learn and execute physical movements.
Okay, picture this scenario because I am absolutely sure you've been there. You're working on a skill and a coach gives you a technical cue that is completely 100% correct. They tell you something like keep your elbow in or drive through your hips or maybe soften your fingers. So you nod, you focus super intensely on that specific body part and you try it again. But suddenly, you find that the harder you apply that perfect cue, the clumsier you get. Your coach wasn't wrong about the mechanics, but the very second you pointed your conscious attention directly at that body part, your whole movement just got stiffer, slower, and incredibly deliberate.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates what we can call the coaching paradox. The standard response to a stiff movement is usually, more instruction, more cues, more details, more body parts to consciously micromanage. But here is the core problem. Your limbs are not actually the unit your motor system works in. Your motor system works in outcomes. It thinks in terms of get this object over there, or keep this platform level, or put this ball on that line. When you force conscious attention onto a single joint, you're basically taking this brilliant unconscious system that flawlessly coordinates dozens of muscles in parallel and forcing it to submit to a conscious supervisor who can only handle one thing at a time. The cue is totally accurate, but the place you aimed your attention, it's completely wrong.
The science behind where we aim our attention is just fascinating. We're talking about changing just one single word in a coaching cue. Just shifting the focus from a body part to the object you're actually acting on has produced measurable, scientifically validated performance differences across more than 100 published experiments. It is literally one of the most rigorously tested concepts in modern motor learning. So the solution comes from a researcher named Gabrielle Wolf, and honestly, it is deceptively simple. It all comes down to the difference between an internal focus and an external focus. An internal focus points your attention inward, right at your own body, your feet, your arm, your fingers. An external focus, on the other hand, points your attention outward, at the intended effect of the movement. So that's the platform you're standing on, the club head you're swinging, or the rim you're shooting at. It's the exact same task, you're the exact same person, in the exact same moment, but you've given your brain a totally different address for its attention. This was so cleanly demonstrated back in 2001. Researchers Gabrielle Wolf, Nancy McNevin, and Charles Shea took 28 university students and had them balance on a moving platform. One group was told to concentrate internally, focus on their feet. The other group focused externally. They were told to focus on markers mounted on the platform itself. But to make it harder, they also had to respond to sudden audio tones by pressing a button. This little tone test gives us a brilliant read on how much mental bandwidth the balancing act was actually eating up. The external focus group, they not only balanced way better, but their tone response time was actually faster. They were doing the harder version of the task with mental attention to spare.
And this effect isn't just limited to balancing on a wobbly platform. Let's talk about raw power. In a 2010 study published in Human Movement Science, Wolf and her colleagues had participants do a vertical jump and reach. When the athletes focused internally on their own fingertips during the jump, they reached an average height of 31.0 centimeters. But when the second group was told to focus externally, specifically aiming their attention at the rungs of the measuring device they were trying to touch, they jumped an average of 32.4 centimeters. They literally jumped higher. And what's even more mind-blowing is that muscle activity, which they measured by EMG, was actually lower with the external focus. So let that sink in. They achieved a higher jump while actually using less electrical muscle effort. So why on earth does this happen? Well, the proposed mechanism behind these dramatic results is known as the constrained action hypothesis. Basically, the argument is that an internal focus actually constrains and bottlenecks the automatic control processes that would normally just run the movement effortlessly. It literally gets in its own way. An external focus, on the other hand, lets your motor system self-organize. It allows you to tap into that incredibly fast, unconscious machinery your body already has. Remember those faster reaction times to the audio tones? That proved that external focus wasn't just better. Structurally, it was cheaper for your brain. Over the years, the studies just kept piling up. In 2021, a massive, comprehensive meta-analysis was published in Psychological Bulletin by Lee Quen Cha and colleagues, including Gabrielle Wolf.
They pulled together 73 performance studies and 40 learning studies, covering nearly 2,000 participants. This was the heavyweight paper that seemingly settled the debate once and for all. The 2021 meta-analysis reported a highly significant effect size of 0.583 for retention, which heavily favored an external focus. They also found super positive effects for immediate performance, transfer of skills, and muscle efficiency. For all intents and purposes, it essentially cemented external focus as a performance-enhancing law in sports science. Well, actually, hold on a second, because science is an ongoing conversation, right? And we need to introduce what I call the honest caveat. In 2024, in that exact same journal, a team led by Brad McKay and Michael Carter published a really robust Bayesian reanalysis of this very same literature. And guess what? They found that the retention effect size collapsed dramatically, down to just 0.15.
So what happened? The 2024 researchers argued that this literature carries substantial reporting bias, which basically means that studies that found zero difference were getting stuffed in a drawer and rarely published. When they mathematically modeled that bias to account for those missing studies, the estimates shrank across the board. Performance went from 0.264 to basically nil at 0.01. Retention dropped to 0.15, transfer to 0.09. And that EMG muscle efficiency effect we talked about, it plummeted all the way down to 0.06. Their ultimate conclusion? On average, these effects might actually be near zero.
Now you're probably thinking, okay, so which is it? Does this work or not? Two meta-analyses, same journal, completely opposite headlines. Listen, that is not a scandal. That is exactly what a contested scientific literature looks like from the inside. When we dive into the research in this explainer, it is absolutely vital to present it warts and all. We aren't here to blindly cheerlead, We are here to actually understand. So, with this massive plot twist in mind, what is a learner actually supposed to do with all this?
The honest answer actually makes this concept way more useful to you, not less. We can synthesize this whole debate into 3 actionable steps that you can take straight to the gym, the field, or the studio today.
Step 1, treat external focus not as some unbreakable law of physics, but as a cheap, personal experiment. Pick a measurable task, something super objective like putts holds, jump height, or maybe your serve accuracy. Run 20 attempts using a body-focused internal cue. Then run 20 attempts using an effect-focused external cue. Alternate the blocks to keep it fair, and literally write your numbers down. Look, if the published scientific average is near zero, then the only number that truly matters in the world is your own individual result. Test it on yourself. Step 2, when you are given a piece of coaching advice, translate the cue. You do not have to throw away your coach's mechanical diagnosis. You just relocate the address. So if they tell you to squeeze your glutes, just translate that in your head to push the floor away. If they tell you to snap your wrist, readdress it outward to throw the club head through the ball. You keep the exact same intended mechanics, but you give your brain a target it can actually process without seizing up.
And finally, step 3, notice the load, not just the score. Pay close attention to how the movement feels mentally. If a translated external cue leaves you feeling less stiff, a bit more fluid, and with mental attention left over to actually watch the game happening around you, that is incredibly valuable data. Whether a meta-analysis says the effect is huge or totally negligible, if it frees up your mind in the heat of the moment, it is absolutely a tool you need in your arsenal. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today, right? From wobbly platforms all the way to the deep weeds of scientific reporting bias. But the application is entirely in your hands now. I want to leave you with a provocative question to really think about. What is one internal, body-focused cue that you hear all the time in your specific sport or hobby? And exactly how would you readdress it outward? Seriously, think about it, run your own experiment, and see what happens to your performance. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.